Hi, everybody, and welcome to my channel. Thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. So I hope everybody's doing good. Thank you for all the dialogue. Let me know if you have any questions. Subscribe if you haven't. Any thoughts, any experiences, give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you have any ideas or requests too. So I would love to continue to learn. I'm learning as I go, and it's great. It's been great. So thank you. So I've always wondered, I think many of us have, about secret societies and like the Illuminati, which I believe means like the illuminated ones, the ones who are enlightened, the ones that actually control the world and run how things work. Now, I think we've all kind of heard this idea for a long time. We've all heard it before. This idea goes back a long, long time, hundreds, if not thousands of years. But it's something that we all become aware of at a certain point, kind of wonder if it's true or not. And I have too. So I've read a lot of the conspiracy theory books over my lifetime and things online, about this kind of thing. And of course, I've also wondered how much of this is true. Is it true? Is there any truth to it? So I've been trying to get information about it, and the answer is not what I expected. I'm going to explain to you where I'm at with this so far. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the general idea of the Illuminati is like a shadow government, a government that really controls the world and world governments and how things go economically, militarily. They are like business CEOs and billionaire families that run the Federal Reserve, control the money system on the planet, and basically they're like puppet masters, kind of pulling the strings of how things work for whatever reason. People say power, some people say control, others say there is either an interdimensional. I've read all kinds of theories, like with the spiritual realms, like some sort of connection there. And there's a little bit of truth to that, and or some people say there's a physical interdimensional, like alien aspect to that as well. Now, there's a little bit of truth to that as well. So this is real fascinating, and I'd say over the past few months, I've been having a lot of channeling sessions where I ask a lot of questions, and like with a lot of things, try to write it down and piece it together, and then see what it looks like, and then try to ask again, just to make sure I heard and understand clearly. So that's kind of my process. But to start with, the idea of the Illuminati is real, very real. So, but it's not what I thought, and it's not. Well, let me just put this out there and see what you guys think. Now, and this sounds crazy. Sounds crazy to me. Maybe it doesn't to some of you, but so our human history, where to begin as humans, I think that's a good spot to start. We are, so Homo sapiens, correct me if I'm wrong, but are the most closest thing to modern humans that we found archaeological evidence for. Now, the idea is that we evolved from them or had some similarities with them, and there's some genetic or DNA proof in us that they can find, some trace elements of Homo sapiens. So now, this part kind of blew my mind, and this is kind of where this whole Illuminati or secret society type thing starts. I mean, Homo sapiens were very real, of course, very real species here. There's a lot of different varieties of humans that like came and went and intermarried and interbred with each other, but we were not one of them. So, and from what I understand, there's a lot of gaps in the timelines as far as where did we come from? Whereas we can only find the closest things that resemble us. Therefore, the evolution theory that we evolved from Homo sapiens, or a mix of a variety of Neanderthal, or different types of humans. So, but there's gaps in like theories. There's theories as to where all the different racial types came from, and why there's no evidence. There's only trace evidence, for example, of the most recent extinct species that we're related to. So now the idea has been floated, and I've heard this before, and I never believed it until I started getting more like confirmation when doing these sessions, is what about the idea, do humans even come from Earth? I mean, is it possible we came from elsewhere? And this information is emerging more and more. And from what I understand, the answer is yes. So our origins are actually elsewhere. There's other types of interdimensional and alien beings out there that the government is communicating with that look just like us. Taller humans are about the same size. There's a whole variety of species out there, but human and humanoid types are one of them. Now, there's evidence on Mars of structures that resemble Egyptian architecture, and you can see this on the NASA website. So it's not like this is not conspiracy theory anymore. A lot of stuff is declassified. And of course, the Pentagon has declassified documents about UFOs or UAPs, as they're now called, alien bases on the moon, remote viewing. So this stuff is like on their website. You can go look at. This is not stuff I'm just like speculating. This is stuff that's finally being confirmed little by little. Now, there's nothing really out there saying, look, there's, humans came from another planet, or we once colonized Mars and Earth, or maybe we came from Mars and then colonized Earth. But there's evidence of civilizations and ones that resemble ancient human civilizations on Mars. So they're trying to figure out where did it go and why the similarities and who was that up there? Was it us, or what is our true origin? And so we actually come from elsewhere, and we're brought to kind of like a this part I'm still trying to figure out. Okay, so bear with me, but like almost like a slave species by a more advanced race that actually used us to build civilizations and do their work for them. So in other words, they brought huge communities of humans here of different types, of different racial types that come from different planets. Some things can be tied to evolution, but our differences, the reason we have trace elements of Homo sapiens in us is because when we were brought here, again, I know this sounds crazy, and maybe it doesn't to some of you, but to me it's just kind of blowing my mind. But from what I understand, their genetics were kind of mixed with ours to make humanoids from elsewhere more habitable to this Earth environment. So to kind of mix some of the genetics and DNA and stuff like that of the species from the homeworld here to make us more adaptable and able to last longer down here. So, and we were brought here to build civilizations, and by a higher race of beings who also look like humans, to build their cities and mine things and get resources for themselves. So, this is probably a whole nother video where this story goes. But tracing, kind of tying back, I want to keep this relevant to like Illuminati and secret societies. So, at a certain point, there was a rebellion. Other alien and interdimensional species got involved too, with the war to actually free humans from like slavery and tyranny on Mars and on Earth. So, and then once that happened and they were freed, so the good forces won, the bad ones left. We were left to develop on our own. Like, just like we kind of have a non-interference policy with very basic civilizations. Here, say in like the Amazon jungle and rainforests, or like the Sentinelese tribe, which I did a video on, living very, very basically, hunter-gatherer, as they did hundreds and thousands of years ago. We just kind of leave them to their own, and we don't bother them, and we don't we allow them to evolve on their own and reach out to us if need be, and have developed we can communicate with them if we want to, but basically leave them to their own devices, and so as not to corrupt their culture and to respect their own evolutionary path. And if they want to, catch up to where the rest of modern humanity is, they can, but we leave it up to them to reach out to us for the most part. And it's the same idea applied to us. which is why, because I've always wondered, we know aliens are real by now and UFOs, so why don't they just come down and say, hey, here we are, and explain everything about how everything works and what's going on Mars and why the alien base is on the moon, which the government, again, has confirmed. So it's the same idea. It's up to us to kind of get to a certain level, which we're getting to now, which is exciting. Now we have space travel. We've discovered alien bases here on this planet that have been here a long time, and also have been communicating with them directly more and more over the past 100 years. As our technology increases, so does our interaction with them. And now we're in outer space. And so as we're getting to that point, we're at the threshold where it's simply going to be common knowledge that there's life out there. And the government is slowly preparing for this and releasing this information gradually, so it doesn't cause too much disruption for religious reasons, for economic, even military reasons, as to slowly release this information so it doesn't, humanity doesn't cave in on itself. So now, what was left behind were ancient texts and stories and ideas. There's a lot of there's theories out there that say that ancient Sumerian or the Abrahamic religions or even Hinduism. There's a lot of the most ancient religions out there, Zoroastrianism, weren't necessarily a creation myth that humans attempted to understand. Some are. There's some pantheons and religions out there that are offshoots of that or attempts to understand their existential theories as far as like what all this is and where it came from. But when these other higher species left, they were described as gods, as men who could fly in ships, and what we had for human conception that we didn't have ideas what spaceships were, so we would call them like flying chariots or men who would fly through the skies, like angels and gods, for example. And like the Greeks had a variety of gods for different reasons. So these were kind of a story or a metaphor left behind, kind of describing a greater advanced species of beings versus an actual god. So there's a lot of interesting theories out there about that. But as time moved forward, so what humanity was left with behind was basically some level of technology in cities and ability for like farming, hunting, gathering, irrigation, things like that. So all the knowledge and abilities that they had a few thousand years ago when all this occurred. So, and templates basically and blueprints on how to run a society. So and ultimately they have the ultimate knowledge. There's many secret societies that decided to keep this information hidden and carry it forward through the ages, knowing eventually that it's not going to be secret anymore. So this is an interesting part of it, is there's going to be a threshold where the knowledge they hold is going to be common knowledge, and that's understood over time. But in the meantime, the best way for us, in other words, we can't evolve to a point of post-scarcity, meaning we don't rely on resources that we can't replenish anymore. And we have achieved free, infinite, zero-point energy to source all our needs from. And so in other words, post-scarcity, we don't need to be fighting, and the economic model will change. Everyone will have access to everything, and there's no need for us to, really be at war or fight as much or control resources, and these things won't define the economy and drive our military force or economic power. So, but until we get to that point, clearly we need to evolve to a point where we can conceptually understand outer space existence, renewable energy, and create the technology to harness it and tap into it. And we're getting to that point, which is very interesting. So now back then they didn't have, our ancient civilizations didn't have spaceships or technology or, things like that. We didn't have, hospitals and electronics and things like this. But we understood because of our connection to like off-world other planets and experience with that in the past, we knew that these higher advanced beings existed with this technology and capabilities. And we're realizing that now too, and there's some great videos out there where, and I have some up too, where some government employees, former government employees or current ones that are part of this process actually explain, yeah, there's beings out there, planets who have reached post-scarcity and have amazing levels of technology. So now, these ancient, now in order to get from point A to point B, so a few thousand years ago to now, we need some sort of system. Knowledge has to build on itself. And there has to be best possible ways to maintain and control, because Illuminati and stuff like that always has the context of control, right? And secrecy. And there is secrecy, but the control is meant for maintenance and future growth, which I found real curious because it always has such a negative context to it. But the ultimate realization is there are people in the know who have this information, and it's been kept secret. So they've known about this for hundreds, if not thousands of years. There's aliens out there. This level of technology exists. One day we'll get there, and we need a way to get there. But the best way to really do that is to kind of build and create societies that will get to that point. Now, whether we shared that information outright initially back then as a good thing or not is interesting. It's questionable, because I was wondering the same thing. Why not just get that out in the open back then? Well, there's so many forms of tribalism, race, gender, culture, geography, political ideology, religion, if I haven't said that yet. So there's always going to be conflict. So the best way, there's models for society to move forward. And of course, there's always going to be the eternal good versus bad balance as well, right? So you're going to always have people who think differently and want to create their own society. We'll always see that. It's part of the human duality, right? The nature of just knowledge. Good versus bad, freedom versus control, communism, capitalism, democracies and republics versus absolute monarchies, things like that. So religious differences. So there's always going to be a group of people, and they don't work together. And over time, so it's not like the Illuminati is a group of people behind the scenes saying, okay, yeah, there's the good guys and the bad guys. Like the leaders of North Korea and China and Russia don't meet with the president of the United States or any of their delegates or anything and say, okay, let's start a war to do this, or let's start a war to do that. Now, there's a ruling elite that kind of operate behind the scenes. Things like George W. Bush, who I actually asked some questions to, interestingly enough, Senior, the one who died with Barbara. Really polite too when I talk to them and try to get information for everybody is whenever I do, funny enough. But so thank you for that. And he said he confirmed that he was privy to this information. He knew all this stuff. He and his son both went through the Skull and Bone Society at Yale, I believe. And there's speculation about what they know and do. This is the information they're given. And it's kind of a behind-the-scenes network of power players and political and business elite and people who stay in contact, who do have very powerful business and economic and military contacts. Just a network of people. But not everybody belongs to these societies, and not everyone knows this knowledge, and some people have a bit of knowledge of it. So it's... But there's a core group of people behind the scenes that try to advance their own agenda, and really it is a good versus bad thing. You can almost even kind of look at them, not completely, because there's always bad elements, as a kind of good force to get to a point where we control ultimate power and knowledge, so that actors like Russia and North Korea don't. Because if you can imagine, if they beat us to it, then the whole world's in trouble. So they have their own networks and things like that working against it. So what this secret brotherhood of knowledge and ancient knowledge was to protect this kind of information and move society forward, considering all our different tribal groups and differences, and over time until we reach a point, but make sure that we are always in control of the knowledge and power. Otherwise, what's the point? Because the whole world is going to fall to tyranny and chaos. So they know eventually that this information, and it is gradually, is going to become known to us, but it has to be released little by little as we gradually reach that point of technology, which we are, and eventually it will just become common knowledge on planet Earth. If you could think about it, our grandkids or great grandkids are going to grow up thinking, knowing, oh man, yeah, there's UFOs, there's aliens, of course. There's aliens in the moon and here in underground bases on Earth, and they've been here a while, and we're working towards free energy for the whole planet, and we'll solve that for everybody. So it's going to become a common goal and that kind of thing, but we had to all collectively reach this point. And it hasn't been a perfect process, so I'm not sticking up for this sort of thing, just to let you know. But it makes sense on a general level. Nothing's ever perfect, right? So, but overall, it is an agenda of good to eventually, when the planet, like a one world government, it's not a bad idea. I used to kind of equate that or conflate that with negative things. But there's nothing wrong with the whole world being on the same page and working together as humans. That's what we should be doing, right? We should all really be seeking the best that we all have, put all our resources into bettering humanity. Not just for Americans and not just for Chinese people or not just for, communists or capitalists, but let's solve the energy question and keep our planet clean and safe. And this will eliminate a lot of conflict. But that's why we have to be careful with releasing this knowledge, because if this upends thousands of years of religious ideology and things like that, it could lead to more chaos. Or remember, again, if the technology and military power and the money and the control is not in the hands of those who are on the good and the freedom side of the balance of power, what's the point? So there's a good element to it, and that I found fascinating. And I also found fascinating the reasons behind it and its origins, considering where do we come from. And again, just to summarize, also the fact that what they know as secrets, they, at a certain point in time, which is right about now, which is cool again, expected all of this to gradually become known anyways to the public. So they're not against like free energy for all, and they're not like these evil puppet masters saying we're here to control humanity and make you slaves. The whole reason for this gradual progression and control of knowledge and power is to get us to a certain point where we can all thrive and benefit. So, and so of course, for this to happen to be maintained, there of course are powerful families and dynasties and people. And again, there's all kinds of people in the military and government who don't know about this or know a little bit, like I said. And but there definitely is a network of people behind the scenes who help kind of move things forward. But they're not all powerful. They can't just start wars or influence presidents. There's a lot of different types of people out there that are not under their influence, but are a part of it. In other words, they help kind of move things forward together. So it's not like they can just say, president has to do this, or our armies have to do this. Everything is done with a certain goal and agenda in mind, and not everybody goes along with it sometimes. But the general goal is to just kind of move everything forward gradually until we get to a certain point. So, and it makes sense if you really think about it in this context. It's really fascinating. And so, no one wants, it's not like there's some greedy cabal. Yeah, there are, of course, but of groups of people and bankers that don't want free energy for people because it will, release the slaves or it will make people free. Everyone wants a better standard of life for all humans, which is not everybody, of course, and it's increased a lot over the past 100 years or so with technology. So it's not like, but it has to be gradual again. It's not like we can just introduce free energy to the world. It's upend everything. It's gonna change everything. It has to be gradually done, just like it has been over the past hundreds and thousands of years. Anyway, so I talked longer than I thought I would, but thanks again for listening. Let me know your thoughts on this. I'm kind of curious, because holistically, this paints a very interesting picture for me, and it just makes sense in a lot of ways, and kind of really puts it in a new light for me. So I'm curious what your thoughts are, and input is, or questions, or ideas, or anything like that, as always. So thank you for watching. I mean that again, and everybody, please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.